Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to analyze the tactical issues Arsenal encountered in their 3-0 loss against Aston Villa. When we break down the game and we do look at the board, we have Aston Villa in a 4-2-3-1 and Arsenal started in a 3-4-3. So first, when we start with Arsenal, we have to look at their overall shape. And like I said, they did start in a 3-4-3, but when we analyze the roles that the players did conduct, it was very interesting. When you look on the right-hand side, you have Bellerin pushing forward from right back, and then you have Willian adopting his position on that touchline. There was a bit more variation in terms of their overall positioning. Like I said, if you have Willian shifting it a bit narrow to occupy target, then Bellerin would push forward on that right touchline and vice versa. If Willian was pulling out target towards the touchline, then you would see Bellerin pushing forward in a more narrow position. What often happened there was that they had Grealish dropping off much deeper to create 1v2 situations, and this did give Bellerin more time on the ball when Willian would shift the ball back into him. When you look on the left-hand side, what ended up happening there was that Saka did hug the touchline and Tierney did adopt more of a narrow, deep position. So ultimately, it did look like Arsenal were still in a 3-man backline, but pushing forward, they did look like more of a conventional 4-4-2, with Bellerin giving license to push forward from right back. And then when you look in that midfield zone, which we'll get to in a bit, you had Elneny and Thomas Partey holding a central position. But up front, with Saka adopting a wide position, he would pull out Cash, and that would allow Aubameyang to drift central into the box just ahead of Konsa. This means that you have Arsenal attacking with 5 players and defending with 5 players. Now you have to question why Mikel Arteta would approach the game in that manner. One would be given the fact that Aston Villa can cause a threat in transition. So you want Tierney and Holding out there to cover out the spaces in those wider areas when Saka and Bellerin are pushing forward. Over on Arsenal's left-hand side, the direct threat of Trezeguet could have worried Arteta, and that's where you have Tierney there just in case he's able to break forward in transition. But the easier alternative for that scenario is to have either Elneny or Thomas Partey shifting out into those channels to ensure that there is cover. Even if you had both of those central midfielders holding a deeper position and shifting out to the channels when Arsenal lose possession, that would have enabled Tierney to push forward. And that ultimately was an issue that Arsenal encountered, because when you look over on that right-hand side, they were able to create chances due to the fact that Willian was attracting 2 markers towards him. But over on the left, with Aubameyang drifting into more of a central area, Aston Villa solely had to worry about Saka pushing down that side because Tierney was deeper. This issue ultimately stems with the manner in which they look to build out of the back. You have 3 center backs, and then you have Elneny dropping off in between Holding and Gabriel to receive the ball. So Aston Villa pressed in more of a 4-2-4, and what ended up happening was that they had Barkley and Watkins just ahead of those 2 center backs, and then they had Trezeguet and Grealish pushing high as well to close down Bellerin and Tierney. That leaves Thomas Partey in a central position, and he was simply boxed in as he had Barkley and Watkins just ahead of him, and then Douglas Luiz and McGinn looking to step forward to apply pressure. Over on the left-hand side, there was no legitimate outball because Tierney was so deep, and all Trezeguet had to do was block off the passing lane in between Tierney and Saka to ensure that he couldn't get on the ball. Now, if you push Tierney into more advanced positions, that pegs back Trezeguet, and then you could have Thomas Partey shifting into that zone to pick up the ball to help Arsenal push forward. With Tierney pushing forward, then he occupies Trezeguet, and if Trezeguet doesn't respect him, then that leaves a clear outlet for Tierney to get on the ball. But if Trezeguet does shift out, then that leaves Saka with Cash and Aubameyang also in that zone to occupy Cash if he doesn't shift into a central position. In terms of pressing, Arsenal did a very good job of ensuring that Aston Villa couldn't build out of the back. What we ended up seeing was Aubameyang and Willian stepping out to the center backs, and Douglas Luiz being occupied by Lacazette. Thomas Partey stepped into the path of McGinn, and Elneny pushed forward to occupy Barkley. That meant that Bellerin and Saka would step out into the path of targeting Cash. There was a time where Mings poked the ball into McGinn, dropping between the center backs, but Thomas Partey's instant pressure forced a loose pass to Martinez, and Thomas nearly poked the ball beyond the Aston Villa goalkeeper. Nevertheless, while many complained about the system not allowing Arsenal to create enough chances, they got into several good goal-scoring positions, but simply lacked the cutting edge to convert those chances into goals. If we look to one example, it's Elneny sliding the ball to Bellerin on the touchline beyond Grealish, and Bellerin has three options in the box. Willian breaking off target's shoulder, which may pull out Mings, and then you see Lacazette and Aubameyang in isolated situations with Konsa and Cash, but an unmarked Bellerin delivers his cross into Martinez. When we shift to the left-hand side, it's Tierney pushing forward to peg back Trezeguet, and he slides the ball wide to Saka, which pulls out Cash. This is where we immediately see Aubameyang shifting away from McGinn to enter the box ahead of Konsa, and that leads to Saka taking on Cash to the byline and delivering across the box that Konsa clears. But in that play, it's Tierney pushing forward that helps create that chance. And you also see four Arsenal players in the box that Saka should connect with. In that same sequence following Konsa's clearance, Tierney skips away from Trezeguet and pokes the ball across Cash to Saka down that left channel. You have Aubameyang between the center backs and Lacazette free at the back post off target, but Saka plays an uncharacteristic pass out for a goal kick. Around the half-hour mark, we could shift to some good 3v3 action that could shift to 3v4 action if Mings pinches over. We witness Bellerin sliding the ball back to Willian, which does pull out Grealish and target, and with McGinn there as cover, you end up seeing Saka running off Grealish's shoulder into right half space, and that's where you end up seeing Willian poking the ball in towards his path. With Mings shifting across to provide cover, Saka has Lacazette goal side of Konsa and Aubameyang calling for the ball off Cash's shoulder at the back post, but once again Saka's cross is cleared by Cash. That clearance ends up falling into the path of El Neni, and as he holds off Barkley and dribbles across Douglas Luiz, he slides the ball out to Aubameyang ahead of Cash in left half space, who awaits the overlapping run from Tierney to maximize the 2v1, but it's Konsa making a vital sliding block to ensure that Arsenal can't harm them. Minutes later, it's holding on the ball in Villa's half ahead of Barkley pressure, and he has Willian dropping narrow ahead of target, and Bellerin running off Watkins out in those wider areas. So the Arsenal center back scoops the ball over target and Watkins into the right channel, where Bellerin guides the ball beyond target attempting to recover, and that's where you see Lacazette goal side of Konsa and Aubameyang ahead of Cash. But with Mings coming across, Bellerin has to cut across him as well, and he ends up, and rather than shooting, Bellerin attempts to pull the ball back to Aubameyang, but it's intercepted by Trezeguet. If we shift back over to the left-hand side, we witness Tierney sliding the ball across Trezeguet for Aubameyang down the left channel to take on Cash, and he pokes the ball across Cash for Saka breaking into left half space. Saka can either fizz the ball through the 6-yard box for Lacazette peeling off Mings, or pull it back between Douglas Luiz and Konsa for Bellerin breaking into the box late. However, Saka aims to play a first-time fizz ball into the 6-yard box, and Martinez does well to push it away. If we continue to look down that left-hand side, it's Gabriel sliding the ball around Barkley for Saka position between Douglas Luiz and Trezeguet. You have Aubameyang occupying Cash, and Saka guides the ball out to Tierney pushing forward beyond Trezeguet. This is where we see Aubameyang spinning in towards the Konsa Cash gap towards goal to either receive the ball, but he's also pulling Konsa away outside of that box. This is where we see Tierney picking out Lacazette running goal side of target off Mings towards the box, but he nods his effort from 6 yards out over the net, and from there Lacazette at worst has to at least test Martinez. And if we look to one final example from that opening half, it was Thomas Partey sliding the ball wide to Willian, which pulled out Grealish and target, and we see Thomas charging into the box to drag away McGinn, and Willian dropping the ball off to Bellerin. When you look towards the box, Bellerin has Lacazette and Saka between the two center backs, and Aubameyang free at the back post beyond Cash. But even with all those options available to Bellerin unmarked, he ends up clipping a tame effort at Cash to close off the first half. The second half did see Dani Ceballos enter the game for Thomas Partey, but ultimately Arsenal still heavily relied on their creativity from their wide players. There was Ceballos splitting Douglas Luiz and Trezeguet for Tierney pushing forward down the left, and that's where you see Saka occupying Cash, with Aubameyang between the center backs and Lacazette at the back post on target. But once again, it was Tierney's ball across Trezeguet that was cleared by Konsa. Meanwhile, when we shift to Villa, although they didn't create multiple chances until the game stretched out, what we ended up seeing from those opening stages was that they had a clear area that they wanted to exploit. They wanted to attack holding, and they looked to dump balls into space beyond Bellerin to have Watkins, Grealish, and Barkley shift into those zones. Villa's opening goal also stemmed down that left-hand side, but Arsenal were initially in a good defensive position. You have Grealish taking on Holding into the left channel and dropping the ball off to Barkley, and you also witness Willian, Bellerin, and Target in that zone. When Barkley receives the ball, he ends up having Willian step in towards his path, and he ends up playing a reverse ball beyond the Brazilian to split Bellerin and Holding for Target in left half space. At that moment, Saka is still a few yards ahead and goal side of Trezeguet, who's beginning his run into the 6-yard box. But with Saka ball watching, Target fizzes a great low ball through the 6-yard box, and Trezeguet breaks off Saka's shoulder. And by the time he does react, he ends up lunging to direct the ball into his own net. If we look to one more example from that half, it's Willian poking the ball away from Barkley that falls to McGinn in a deep inside left position, and he locates Grealish's run between Gabriel and Holding, and he clips the ball over Holding into left half space. He wastes a few seconds by waiting for the ball to bounce perfectly onto his right foot for the second touch, and that allows Gabriel to come across to intervene. And similar to Arsenal, Villa continued to attack that way in the second half as Arsenal looked to push forward to gain an equalizer. Target was able to bypass Bellerin with a pass to Grealish on the left touchline. Because Bellerin is caught out of position, Holding has to step into the path of Grealish, and that's where you see Barkley darting between Ceballos and Holding in that left channel to receive Grealish's pass. Barkley is able to run at Ceballos, who is recovering, with Grealish breaking beyond Holding into the box to receive Barkley's pass around Ceballos into the left half space. Grealish ends up breaking to the byline with Holding tracking his movement, and he's able to cut back onto his stronger foot to fire an effort on goal that Leno pushes away. If we look to another example, we witness great center forward play from Watkins to bring down Martinez's punt and brush off the pressure from Holding to slide out the ball to Grealish. Bellerin doesn't step in towards his path to apply pressure, and Watkins is able to spin off Holding and dart into that gap between the Arsenal center back and Bellerin. Grealish locates it, and he ends up splitting both Arsenal defenders to play Watkins free down that left half space. Holding does well to apply pressure and force him towards the byline, but we witness Watkins cutting back successfully, and he ends up pulling the ball back across Gabriel, who deflects it into the path of Ross Barkley, and that nearly leads to a goal-scoring chance. And ultimately, Villa's final goal epitomizes Arsenal's issue in that game. It stemmed from a poor Tierney ball into Martinez, and he instantly rolled it beyond Bellerin for Grealish, who was able to break from his own third into Arsenal's third. That's where you end up seeing Grealish run at Holding and brush off Bellerin's pressure to play the ball around Holding for Watkins running between the center backs, and he fired his first time effort beyond Leno to kill off the game. Hi everybody, thanks for watching, and subscribe here for your latest tactical analysis and daily commentary on the InnerViews show. And if that wasn't enough, don't forget you could find more organic, unfiltered soccer/football analysis on the InnerViews podcast, the best soccer/football podcast in the world, available on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and any Android apps on your Android devices.